The ROE suddenly changed to basically you can kill an enemy combatant to if you're shot at and the enemy drops his weapon, then you're not allowed to fire.
Obama gave that famous speech about red lines and Assad not, if Assad uses chemical weapons against his own people.
I thought that came straight down from Obama.
It might have done. It might have come from Obama. He absolutely micromanaged every aspect of that war. The Taliban is actually getting its money from us. They are making their money from us. That change to the ROE was meant that our people were taking more risk and in some cases getting killed because they couldn't respond to something unless all of these conditions were met.
Mm-hmm.
And I know a lot of people were I had nothing to do with that. A lot of people were very concerned about that, very angry, and felt it was the wrong thing to do. I don't know enough about combat to be, I wouldn't presume to have an opinion, but I'm sympathetic to that point of view just because of what I saw. So I remember there was an email that came through to everyone in the McChrystal's team who saw his email saw this note, and it made its way around. I think it got leaked in the media somewhere where there was a soldier who was like, your ROE is a piece of shit, basically. And here's the 50 reasons why, this is terrible. We can't win like this.
Do you remember what the ROE was? I think I was in country when this came out, but
I would have to look at it specifically, but
I mean, I remember if I remember correctly, this is when there was going to be a major push in Marja. Am I correct? Do you remember that?
I do remember that.
Lashkar Gah,
Yes.
Helmand province was really hot at the time. And I remember, and it was right after the coast bombing at the CIA base.
Yeah.
And the ROE suddenly changed to basically you can kill an enemy combatant to if you're shot at and the enemy drops his weapon, then you're not allowed to fire. And that came out right before the Marines were going to do that big offensive push into Marja. I believe it was Marja.
Yeah.
And and they said that would be the second biggest offensive that the military had done since Fallujah.
It's huge.
I mean, detrimental. And not only that, I mean, demoralizing your troops.
Was demoralizing.
Demoralizing them. We don't have your back. We don't care what happens. If they drop that weapon, you can't shoot. So to have that going on, playing in your head,
yeah.
If I take this shot, am I going to prison for the rest of my life? On top of all the other decisions that you have to make in combat, I mean, I was so pissed off about that. And I wasn't even in the military anymore. I was contracting for CIA, so it didn't really affect me. But man, I fell for those guys when that shit came out.
I mean, I didn't truly understand until I read that email what it meant. And I also felt for them, and I didn't understand why that feedback was received loud and clear. It was discussed, and it didn't change anything. Didn't change anything. They were going to proceed. But
that didn't come from McChrystal and Flynn, correct? That ROE?
I think it came from McChrystal.
I thought that came straight down from Obama.
It might have done. It might have come from Obama. He absolutely micromanaged every aspect of that war.
He did.
He absolutely did. Yes. Through the NSC, which grew to an astronomical size because they were micromanaging everything. I mean, I was working in counterterrorism in the Pentagon before I went back to Afghanistan, and so I started to understand, because I was part of my job was just briefing all of my seniors every week about new things, and this was at the height of we were designating terrorists and we were targeting terrorists based on financial intelligence, and there was, these weekly briefings to the joint staff and our political bosses. I was in the room for all those things, and I heard, and so I learned a lot about how the chain of command is supposed to work. And when Obama came in, they just added so many layers, and it was like commanders couldn't make decisions anymore. They had to ask permission from the White House, and it screwed up a lot of things. It made a lot of operations impossible. Just ended them before they started, and just made them so much more dangerous as well. Because, I mean, like sometimes you're dealing with a fleeting target. You got to take the opportunity when you have it. And there was just no appreciation for that. But I will say something that happened that might be interesting. So while I was there during that tour, General McChrystal was at a certain point very interested. There'd been a lot of rumors about someone named Ahmed Wali Karzai, who was the brother of President Karzai. And there was a lot of rumors, pretty factually based, that he was a narcotics trafficker and was involved in a lot of really bad things, and also tied to the Taliban. And so McChrystal set us on a deep dive, like the entire, like all of his kind of intel team. You guys go out into the wild and see who has what on AWK, and, come back. I forget how much time we were given, like a month or something. And like, let's everyone get together and let's figure out, like, is this guy, is he really bad? What are we going to do about it? Let's do this deep dive. So there was nothing, like no smoking gun tying AWK to anything. But also, I will say there was so much circumstantial evidence that it was obvious that he was all of those things. But because the ceiling, like, you had to meet an impossible level of certainty that we weren't able to meet. We weren't able, like, no, he never got up on a call and said, I'm going to traffic some drugs today. Hello, my Taliban friends. Like that. Yeah. I mean, that never happened. And he did, I mean, all of his activities were through lieutenants and sub-commanders and stuff. So I remember a huge effort to get everything together. And then it just like, and he was assassinated shortly after that. So the problem went away anyway. But that was, at the time, really disappointing, because I'm like, it's obvious this is a super bad dude and it's a problem for the United States. And he might have also been working with us in some way. I don't know. But the other...
Who assassinated him?
One of his rivals, I guess.
Do you think it was us?
I have no information that it was us. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. But I think that, well, yeah, I have no information on that one way or the other, but I know it solved a problem. With respect to, you mentioned Marja. So one of the other things that I remember from that deployment was another kind of directive that came down from McChrystal, where he wanted a deep dive on Taliban finance. And he said, look, there are all these rumors that people have been saying for years, Gulf, like they're getting all their money from the Gulf. And there's a whole, a whole rabbit hole that we can dive down in that, but it's interesting to like 10 people. But like, he wanted a deep dive on Taliban finance. He's like, is their money still really coming from the Gulf, or are there other sources of funding?
How would it be coming? How's it coming from the Gulf?
Well, they would go to the Gulf. The Taliban and Al-Qaeda would go, and other terrorist organizations as well, would go to the Gulf different Gulf countries and individuals who supported what they were doing. And they would go specifically during Ramadan was like a big fundraising period where Muslims are, encouraged to give to charity. And so they would raise a lot of money as a charity towards towards their terrorist causes. And they frame it as they're advancing, radical Islam, and they're fighting, the great Satan or whatever. And so, yeah, they raised a lot of money that way. They also, there were in the early days, these were groups that were later designated by the Treasury Department, the State Department, but they were like humanitarian. They were masquerading as humanitarian, like Islamic Relief or stuff like that. But they were terrorist fronts, and they were raising money through those avenues, and they raised a lot of money, and it also became a political hot potato because the U.S. government's designating Islamic Relief like, oh, are you Islamophobic? Like, no, I'm terroristophobic. But that's there was not a lot. There was enough political will for a period of time to do that, and then it went away. But fast forward, so, as JSOC commander, obviously McChrystal was focused elsewhere, but I'm sure like he had enough information to know that when he was JSOC commander, a lot of these funds were coming in that way. So he wanted to know, like, here I am, commander at ISAF. How is the Taliban today making its money? And so we got, and there were some colleagues of mine from the Treasury Department. And by that point, there was an Afghanistan threat finance cell. And so there were all these interagency folks that were there doing amazing things and put together a really compelling assessment that the Taliban is actually getting its money from us. They're making its money. They are making their money from us. If you consider our logistics supply chain into Afghanistan, they were extorting money on every single link in that supply chain. So we were paying the Taliban.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Can you be a little more descriptive how that was happening?
This is really what led me to quit government completely was Syria, the Obama's Syria red line. So first after all my experiences, Iraq, Afghanistan, I was pretty disgusted by everything, but I still wanted to serve, and I loved what I was doing, like on a micro level. I loved the people I got to work with. I thought we were working on important things. The fact that I had this kind of financial intelligence background made me a little bit unusual, which I like too, kind of niche. But I remember, I don't think I'll ever forget it. Obama gave that famous speech about red lines and Assad if Assad uses chemical weapons against his own people, like that's a red line and we will act. So I think it was on a Friday when Assad, for the first time, used chemical weapons against the Syrian people. He did it many, many times after, but the first was, I think, on a Friday because we all showed up to work on Saturday. Like no one said, come in, but we just showed up because that's, you know how it is. That's like what you do. Okay, it's going to kick off. We'll just be here to be helpful. And we sat there for hours, and finally one of the bosses came out of his office and was like, y'all should just go home. Nothing's going to happen. And I really had a crisis at that time, and just realized I was like nearing 40, and I just thought, what am I doing with my life?
No matter where you're watching Shawn Ryan Show from, if you get anything out of this, please like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, share this everywhere you possibly can. And if you're feeling extra generous, please leave us a review on Apple and Spotify podcasts.